Okay, so let us continue with the sutta we were looking at this morning. These are the subjects of reviewing here. And let's just go into a little bit more detail for each one of these. And you'll be surprised what you find in the sutta is how far these kind of seemingly very simple contemplations, how far they can take you on the path. It's quite extraordinary in many ways. So let's see how this is done and see how the Buddha is talking about this. And it goes on, carries on like this. What is the advantage for a woman or a man, a layperson or a renunciate, of often reviewing this? I am liable to grow old. I'm not exempt from old age. There are sentient beings who, intoxicated with the vanity of youth, do bad things by way of body, speech and mind. Reviewing this subject often, they entirely give up the vanity of youth, or at least they reduce it. This is the advantage for a woman or a man, a layperson or a renunciate, of often reviewing this. I am liable to grow old. I'm not exempt from old age. So the idea here is basically to establish kind of just the reality of existence, and to get the mind to not be intoxicated and excited and playing around with things that actually are bad, have long-term consequences. You don't want to have this intoxication. There are so many kinds of intoxication in life, and drugs and alcohol, there's only one kind, but there's all kind of things that lead to distortions of the mind. That leads to a wrong kind of outlook. And one of the big ones is just a general intoxication with sensuality. Sensuality can also be intoxicating, and they lead to a bias and a lack of understanding and a clarity about what is going on. But all of these things here as well, that lead to a kind of intoxication with the mind. You don't really see straight. And you will know the difference, when the mind is intoxicated and when the mind is kind of clear and calm. The unintoxicated mind is kind of steady, unexcited about things. It leans towards peace and meditation. The intoxicated mind is the mind that is young. I'm strong and young. I can do what I want and enjoy myself in the world. And you're kind of excited by that. And you can see the difference in mind between that calm, peaceful state and something which is, excited in a wrong kind of way, if you like. And so these things, they calm you down, and you can see why. Old age is not it is not anything to get excited about, and it kind of brings home the realities of what is going on, and so it can make a big difference. And if it can make you a more spiritual person, someone who's more interested in the spiritual path, then great. For goodness sake, contemplate old age. It may not seem like something very nice to do, but it is the reality. And if we hide from reality, it's going to come anyway. Might as well deal with it. And if we deal with it, then all of these things become much more easy. And so how do we do this? And the way to do this, or there are many, you can do whatever way you like, but one way of doing this is to see the signs of old age. See that things are, like the famous question the other day about someone seeing a spot on the skin. I want to get laser treatment to get rid of these spots or whatever. And that's natural to think like that. You see something you don't like. Of course you don't want those spots. You don't want to have pimples. You don't want to have all these kind of things. Of course not. It's natural. So there's nothing. I'm not kind of laughing of you. It's kind of cute. That's why I'm laughing, because this is what human beings are like. And but instead of doing that, you deal with that, look at it, accept it. This is the nature of the body. Stay with it. Allow it to sink in that you are getting older. This is the first sign. And the moment you accept that, the moment you realize that this is the nature of the body, then something kind of magnificent happens. You become peaceful. You become calm. It's like you're letting go of something here. Your attachment, your excitement with the body, your craving for the body in whatever way, to be this way or that way, it kind of drops. Because why? Because you understand the nature of the body. There's nothing here to hold on to. There's nothing permanent, nothing reliable in this body here. It's always letting you down. It's already letting you down. That little brown spot in your face, this is the first letdown of the body here. If you're only in your 30s, it's kind of the beginning, the starting points of old age. Actually, old age begins the moment you're born, of course. So all of this, so you kind of become peaceful with things when you recognize that, because you understand there's nothing here to hold on to. Old age is already with you. It's inside of you. It's waiting to come out, and this is only the starting point. And so this is very beautiful when that happens, because it leads you. You can feel that this is a spiritual power that you're gaining from a simple contemplation like that. So when you see that first grey hair, contemplate it. Wow, this is it. This is the grey hair. Watch that grey hair in the mirror. Tell your barber, when you go to the barber or go to your hairdresser or whatever, and say, when you see a grey hair on my head, don't color it. Pull it out. I want to see that grey hair. This is a sutta is like that. This is the Makadeva Sutta. I think it is in Majjhima Nikaya 84 or something like that. And where the king Makadeva, one of these amazing grand kings of yore, of olden years, goes to his barber and says, when you see the first grey hair on my head, pull it out and show it to me. And after 20,000 years, the barber sees a grey hair on the head of King Makadeva. He pulls it out and he shows it to the king. And the king says, wow, the divine messenger has arrived, and now is the time to renounce my kingdom and start practicing the spiritual path. Isn't that great? That is the power, This is the divine messenger coming to tell you that now time is running out. Your old age is always there with us. Now is the time to kind of get on with the spiritual practice. This is kind of the idea here. So stay with reality a little bit. Okay, if you want to color your hair, do so. But you don't even have to color your hair. Have nice grey hair can be quite cool. Grey hair can be nice. Sometimes you see some people who have grey hair, and actually sometimes they look more distinguished because they have a bit of grey hair. So that's okay. So, but if you, no one is going to judge you if you color your hair. But this is sometimes this can be useful. And so you stay there with the grey hair and you kind of look at yourself in the mirror, and it sinks in and it goes. And then the spiritual path, the peace, the quiet emerges from that, simply from the idea of old age. So this is what a kind of a way of thinking about this, a way that can be very useful. And of course, the problem with being intoxicated, with being excited about things, I'm going to play around in the world because I'm young and I have youthful energy, and yay, how wonderful that is. Then very often part of that playing in the world often brings with it bad actions by body, speech and mind. And that's when it becomes really problematic. All kind of intoxications are distortions of the mind, and so they will have to lead to some kind of bad actions by body, speech and mind. Not treating your fellow human beings in the right way, not having kind of consistent metta or whatever it is that we are aspiring for. You will lose that. Why? Because you're focusing on the wrong things. You're getting excited by the wrong things. So you reduce the vanity of youth, or at least you get rid of it, or you reduce it. And it doesn't really matter how old you are. You're still going to get older. Until the day you die, you're going to get older. But if you get this when you're really young, great. The younger you are, you get this idea, the better it is, because it kind of leads you in the right way. So the next one. What is the advantage of often reviewing this? I am liable to get sick. I'm not exempt from sickness. They are sentient beings so drunk on the vanity of health, do bad things by way of body, speech and mind. Reviewing this subject often, they entirely give up the vanity of health, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage of often reviewing this. I am liable to get sick. I am not exempt from sickness. Similar thing again, understanding the nature of the body. you get sick, and if you have that sickness, just don't go for those pills. Don't go to the doctor straight away. Oh yeah, the doctor's going to sort it out. Yeah, no worries. There's medicines for this. Take a little bit of time to contemplate what is going on. Of course, you should go to the doctor. Of course, you should take medicine because we need to use what is available. But also take the opportunity to contemplate because this is the nature of the body, to get sick. And sometimes people take pride in their health. Yeah, I'm a really healthy person. I never get sick. And, I don't get sick all that much, actually. And sometimes I had to be careful. Why am I telling people I don't get sick very often? It's just an illusion anyway. I shouldn't be telling anyone about that. I should rather tell them when I do get sick. That's kind of much more realistic. And... the beautiful saying that you find in Ajahn Brahm's book, I think it's in the opening door of your heart, where he says that when you go to the doctor, you should say, doctor, nothing is wrong with me, I'm sick again today. And that's kind of it's a powerful insight, because it is the reality of the body. And the doctor's going to think you're a bit funny, but that's all right. The doctors, doesn't matter what the doctors think, And then you realize it's the nature of the body. And that's also where this idea, when Ajahn Brahm talks to doctors and he tells them how they should deal with patients, the idea is that you shouldn't curing is not really your job, because you don't know if you can cure a patient. That depends on the patient's karma, it depends on all kinds of things. It's impossible to always cure. You haven't failed because you haven't cured. You have failed if you haven't cared. That's when you have failed. Caring is what we should do. And this is the outcome for us as well. If we understand the nature of the body, we become more caring, more compassionate, more understanding, more reasonable with our fellow human beings and also with ourselves. Because we know that this body is not all that interesting. The excitement of this body is kind of way overdone. The reality of the body sinks in when you do this kind of contemplation. This is the nature. Sickness is in you right now, waiting to come out. There are probably cancer cells in there. Everyone has cancer cells waiting to start growing. Everyone has trillions of little viruses and bugs kind of in the system. There's kind of amazing. We are kind of this. What are we? This living, far more living organism in this one body than you would think. It's kind of interesting when you think about that. What trillions of bugs in this body right now? It's kind of a strange thought, isn't it? Is it really your body after all? All these bugs are living in there. For them, it's their home, right? Yeah. And they look after your home, eat well, so we can live for a long time. I don't know what they are saying, these little bugs. But so it is the nature of the body. There's nothing to be proud of that you are healthy. Okay, if you're healthy, great. It's not going to last. It's going to be there for a short while. And this is kind of the idea here. Use this contemplation to see, get that sense of distance and perspective on the body. The reality comes in. Your mind turns around, away from the worldly joys, turns around to the spiritual practice, because that is the way out of all of the essential pleasures and the problems of life. So then we come to the third one, which is probably the most interesting one. And what is the advantage of often reviewing this? I'm liable to die. I'm not exempt from death. There are sentient beings who are drunk on the vanity of life. Isn't that an interesting phrase? The vanity of life. This is kind of only the Buddha comes up with phrases like that. Do bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. Reviewing this subject often, they entirely give up the vanity of life, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage of often reviewing this. I am liable to die. I am not exempt from death. Death is kind of always around the corner. You never know when it's going to happen. And death is so, I think it's so ordinary. It's so banal. We have died so many times before, and suddenly one day you're just dead, and that's it. And very often people say, I wasn't expecting this person to die. It happened so quickly and suddenly. It always happens quickly. It always happens when you don't want it to happen. You're never really ready to die. And so you have to be ready now. Now is the only time to be ready for this thing. And if you're not ready now, you're never really going to be ready. And so we have this expectation somehow that, oh yeah, at least I have a little bit longer to live. Yeah, at least I'm going to finish this retreat. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, you don't know. I don't think we had anyone die on the retreats yet, but there will be a time when the first person dies on this retreat. And in a sense, that would be probably a good thing. Yeah, dying on retreat, especially if you are happy and kind of things are going well. Yeah, it's a good place to die. Ajahn Brahmali told the story at, some of you may have been there, at the Maloka Center. He was talking to someone after the talk on a Friday night, and someone came up to him to speak, and then right in front of him, this person just died. Isn't that interesting? He was sitting there talking to them and suddenly just keeled over, and that was it. He was dead. Yeah, and they had to kind of carry him out. It's kind of extraordinary, right? You never know when these things are going to happen. And maybe that was a good time to die. Yeah, chatting with Ajahn Brahmali, maybe hearing a few jokes. I don't know. So, but the thing is, death is always there. And one of the things that the Buddha says is we should remind yourself of the various ways you can die here. Yeah, you are now in Jhana Grove. Jhana Grove is quite dangerous, you know. Everywhere is dangerous. There is no place that is not dangerous. There is a staircase over there. You could fall in the staircase, yeah. It's true, yeah. You can stumble somewhere and just keel over. There could be a snake. Actually, there aren't that many snakes at this time of the year, but, you know, occasionally there are snakes out. And these are Australian tiger snakes. They are really, maybe it happens while you are walking in the bush, yeah. The snake comes and bang, that's it, you're finished. The chances are small, but if you add up all the small possibilities of dying, add them all up, then you get 1,000,000 small chances, and then the chances that you will die of one of them suddenly increases by quite a lot. Yeah, because there are so many ways you can die, and very often you don't even know what those ways are. And so you always have to be ready here. You don't know when it's going to happen. And if you do that, if you are ready to die at any moment, this is far even more powerful than the contemplation of sickness or old age. If you can die at any moment, what does that do to you? Well, it means that you have no future in this world. That's what it really means. There's nothing in this world that is really interesting. You won't have any desires anymore. You're not going to go off here, go off there, do this, or I have a bucket list. Forget about those bucket lists. Yeah, burn that bucket list straight away. It's nonsense. Yeah, it is Adhamma, it's the anti-Dhamma to have a bucket list. Or if you do have a bucket list, it should be kind. Yeah. Go to the Dhamma center or whatever. That should be the bucket list, rather than all of these other silly things that people think about. And so there is no need for any desires anymore. If it really sinks in that you could die in the next moment, it's a powerful contemplation. It's very hard to imagine that fully. Yeah, you're going to die on your next breath or something like that. It's really hard to imagine. But if you do that, the desires are gone. The ill will is gone. You become really peaceful. And sometimes you see that. You see people on the deathbed. They are very peaceful. And that is precisely because they have given up the attachments and the desires in this world for the five sense realm relating to this life. Now they're going to go somewhere else. They don't know where they're going to go. But because they don't know where they're going to go, how can you crave for anything? You don't know what's going to happen next. And so it's a beautiful idea, the idea of death. People find the idea of death scary. And if you do find it scary, that's okay. It's okay to find it scary. Then don't think about it or use it very carefully. But if for you it is not so frightening, then use it. Yeah, make it real, and then kind of move your mind onto the spiritual path, away from desires, away from cravings. One of the ways of using this idea is to use it in meditation practice. Some days when you sit down, you find yourself being restless or slothful or tired or desiring all kinds of things, and you can't really sit still. I'm sure everyone here has experienced that. It would be a miracle if you hadn't. I would come up and I would shake your hand afterwards if this never happened to you. Everyone has had these experiences, whether you are a monastic or lay person or whatever. And then sometimes if you use the death contemplation in the right way, suddenly it just vanishes, the whole restlessness, because you realize that the mind is kind of seeking for something. You don't even know what it is, but something in this world that it is looking for. And then, bang, no, there's nothing there to go. So do the death meditation sometimes. Contemplate death. And what is very interesting about the idea of death, it is in many ways very similar to meditation practice anyway. Because what the whole idea is that when you're approaching death, like I just mentioned, you are giving things up. There's nothing to hold on to. You are letting go. And you do it naturally because you know you're dying. And of course, meditation is also about letting go. And so if you can bring the idea of death into the meditation now, you can let go right here and now, just as you are supposed to do in meditation. So use that idea of death, and then somehow it will actually enhance your meditation practice. There's a very famous Indian sage called Ramana Maharshi, part of the Advaita Vedanta system in India, which is kind of, they talk about eternal mind and these kind of things. But you this can still meditate very deeply. And he used, when he was very young, I think he may have been in his teens or whatever still, he contemplated death. And he contemplated death so powerfully that he went into a jhana. He became this amazing sage in India he looks like the real deal. There are many frauds in the world of the sages, but there are some who also are, the real thing. And he was one of these sages who would just sit on this kind of concrete platform all the time. It would be like a light bulb hanging down from the ceiling. And he would kind of wear a loincloth, otherwise he had nothing. And he would just sit there all the time, kind of blissed out. That was kind of his life. That's all he did, And then he would give simple teachings. And one of the teachings was the death contemplation, led him into a jhana state. Why? Because you give up everything in this world. There's nothing to hold on to. The five senses, that whole realm kind of loses its meaning here. So this is one way of using the death contemplation, using it with meditation, because the process is very similar. So this is kind of the idea here. You become peaceful, you become quiet. Another way of using the death contemplation that is very helpful is in daily life. So for example, you wake up in the morning, you leave your house, you leave maybe your family behind if you have a family. If you are, I'm not going to say anything naughty. If you are, if you have a family, and you have a good time with your family, then you make sure that you leave your house in a good way every day. You say goodbye to your family members because you know this could be your last day. You don't want to kind of leave everyone behind after an argument. That's kind of crazy. And so today could be my last day. Wow, okay. Say goodbye to everyone in a good way. Don't kind of leave after an argument or something negative. And then you use the death contemplation to ensure that you treat people well. But not just when you leave your house in the morning, but remember, every time you meet somebody could be the last time you meet them. Do you want that to be a good last time or a bad last time? And of course the answer is you want it to be a good last time. Chances are that with so many people here on this retreat, some of you may very well be the last time I see you. Not because you are necessarily going to die or I'm going to die, but that's kind of often what life is like. You see people and life kind of goes in different directions and you never meet again. And so, I think, okay, I may never see some of you again, so I better do the right thing. And kind of be kind and nice and say something useful. And so this is another beautiful way of using this, reminding yourself that every time, it could be the last time we meet. Okay, let's do something, make something good out of it. Every communication, every interaction should be positive if we can. Using the idea of death contemplation in this way. And this is how to use it. So it can be quite hard to make it really real. And so you really have to kind of put yourself in that position where you are going to die. You really have to feel it in your bones that actually you could die today. So if you could die today, what does it really feel like? Well, let's say I will die today. Imagine that you're going to die this afternoon. Or if that's too difficult, tomorrow or next week, whatever works for you. And really get into that mind state. Imagine you are on your deathbed. Imagine this is your last day. What is it going to feel like to be on your deathbed? You are always on your deathbed. This is the point. So if you can imagine being on a deathbed, you're just being realistic, because we are potentially always on your deathbed. You're on your deathbed now because you don't know when it's going to happen. And so bring that experience into your life. Feel what it feels like, and then you can make something really positive out of things that for many people are so negative. In Buddhism, we turn it into something positive. It's kind of amazing how the negative things of the world, the problems of the world, can be seen, all of them, in a positive light, if you know how to reflect on them wisely in a good way. It's one of the marvelous things about the spiritual path. It kind of turns things into something positive. So that is some ideas about the idea of death contemplation. Do it regularly. Make sure it bites. Don't make it do it superficially. Try to make it work for you. Very often people come to me and they say, "Oh, but how do I actually do it? How? What? Okay, I get. Okay, I have to die, but how? What do I do? And the answer is there isn't anything in particular to do. It is just training. You have to do it again and again and again. And as you do it again, it starts to work. Something starts to happen. And sometimes I do a guided death contemplation because it can be helpful to kind of get some of the ideas into your mind about how it happens. And so maybe I'll do it tonight, but you don't really need a guided death meditation. Once you understand how it works, all you need to do is remember that you're going to die, and that's really sufficient. And then all of these things kind of come on board as a consequence. But let's see what happens now. Maybe we can do it tonight just to kind of give you some ideas about how this works. So, that is the idea of the contemplation of death. Then we have the next one. What is the advantage of often reviewing this? I must be parted and separated from all I hold dear and beloved. There are sentient beings who, aroused by desire and lust for the dear and beloved, do bad things by body, speech, and mind. Reviewing this subject often, they entirely give up desire and lust for their dear and beloved, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage of often reviewing this. I must be parted and separated from all I hold dear and beloved. So here it is talking that this is not just about people, but about things, about everything in life. Everything external that is dear to you and that you are holding on to and attached to in one way or another. So it is kind of can be many, many, many things that are included in this. People, things, maybe even immaterial things like titles or things you have gained or achieved in your life or whatever. Many of these things can be part of this. But mostly it means like the material world or people. That seems to be the main idea here. So all of these things are subject to disappearance. All of them are subject to go. Are we ready for that? Are we ready to let go of the people who are closest to us? That is really hard. It's really difficult. One of the most difficult things in life is the people who are really dear to us and then having to see them get sick or die or whatever. And so this kind of gets you ready for that. And this is part of the reason why you do this kind of contemplation. And this was the contemplation that the Buddha recommended to Ananda. When on the Buddha was getting sick towards the end of his life, and Ananda said, he lost his directions and all this. I mentioned this before a few days ago. And then the Buddha said, well, haven't I told you that all that is dear and beloved must become otherwise? And so he hadn't really fully developed that idea yet. And so he kind of lost his bearings because of that. And many of you have had those experiences, someone dear to you dying and feeling the loss of your bearings, a loss of, the meaning in life, and then kind of going astray because of that. Someone mentioned me to this a couple of days ago, that happened to them, and it was kind of, when you hear that, you recognize this is the human experience. We all have these kind of experiences. And so one way of doing this, and this is one of the similes that I usually talk about during retreats, and that is the simile of the borrowed goods. Not only are goods borrowed, but people are also borrowed. We meet for a while, and then we kind of hang out together for a while, and then we must separate again. And we have done this millions of times before, and we're going to, if we carry on, we're going to do it again in the future. And so the idea here is the idea to think of things in your life as borrowed. We think of them as owned. These are my things. But thinking of them as borrowed instead is the kind of the idea here. And something borrowed, there's a different relationship to that thing compared to something you own. I did mention this before, but it is there in the Potalya Sutta, in Majjhima Nikaya 54. And so what is that difference in attitude? And it's a different feeling towards the object, like a car you own compared to a car you rent, or an apartment you own compared to an apartment you rent, or whatever. There's a different feeling. And so think about this also with the people in your life. It's a borrowed relationship. You have it for a while. You know this person is going to depart. They are like a guest in your house. They stay for a while and then they go. Are you able to see people like that? Like guests? Like people who come for a while and then they're gone again? And if you can see people like that, then obviously it changes your attitude. It doesn't mean that you are nasty towards them, anything else. Actually, it means the opposite. It very often the reason why we sometimes argue with our loved ones is because we take them for granted. They're always around. They do the same annoying thing. No, don't do that same annoying thing again. I've told you 1,000 times not to do that. Please. But if they are a guest in your house and they're just coming for a few days, how do you treat your guests? Well, usually you treat them really well. We treat guests much better than we treat our family members sometimes. Right? That's kind of often how it is. Because our guests, well, they're just leaving soon anyway. And so actually by thinking like this, we tend to become better human beings. They are around for a while. Now is a chance to look after them. They are borrowed relationships. They are not my husband or my wife. That my should be taken away. They're not my children. Children come into your life from some kind of deep background. You have no idea, with formed personalities that enter your life. And then you expect that they're going to behave as you tell them. That is wrong expectation. Of course they're not going to behave as you tell them. They're going to act according to their own conditioning. And you have no idea what that conditioning is. So you have to be open for anything pretty much when you have children. And if you try to control them, it is going to not work. There's just going to be strife and problems if you try that. So these children, they enter your life from an unknown past, and after a while they depart into an unknown future, separating ways. And this is kind of what life is like very often. But we have this holding on to things, which is kind of not, doesn't really work, because you can't hold on to things that are unreliable and uncertain. So this is the idea of I must be separated and departed from all I hold dear and beloved. Now I have to say that be careful with all of these perceptions. They may sound very negative and very depressing maybe, and the idea is not to make them depressing and sad. The idea is to enhance your spiritual practice. So if it helps you to kind of have a balanced view of things, that is great. That's exactly what you want. More balance in your life, and then it works really well. But at the same time, as you do these more, they're not really negative, but if it feels like that, build up the positive at the same time. Build up things that give rise to joy and happiness. Do some meditation, be kind, have metta and compassion, all of these kind of things, and then you get the balance right. Otherwise, it may be, if you get these things wrong, then they can be too negative, perhaps. So then we come to the last one. What is the advantage of often reviewing like this? I am the owner of my deeds, the heir to my deeds. Deeds are my womb, my relative, and my refuge. I shall be the heir of whatever deeds I do, whether good or bad. There are sentient beings who do bad deeds by body, speech, and mind. Reviewing this subject, often they entirely give up bad conduct, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage for a woman or a man, a lay person or renunciate, of often reviewing like this. I am the owner of my deeds, the heir to my deeds. Deeds are my womb, my relative, my refuge. I shall be the heir of whatever deeds I do, whether good or bad. So this is the idea of karma, that your deeds carry with you, and you know that is true, because you know that sometimes you have regrets about the past, and that is your deeds coming with you right there when you have regrets for something you did in the past. And those regrets, they carry over from one life to the next one. And so you become the heir of these things in a very profound way. So the one thing that we own in the world, according to the Buddha, is our kamma, our actions. So this is what we own. Everything else we don't own, and these we don't own. This we own. So we tend to get things the wrong way around. Those things that we don't own, we think we own, and those things that we don't, don't actually, the things that we don't own, we think we own, and the things that we actually own, we don't think we own. So we get things the reverse, of what it actually is. We think we can do whatever we want in the world without much repercussions, but of course that is entirely wrong. And so you want to build up, you want to invest for the long term, you want to invest in those things that are really a good long-term investment, and that is your kamma. And so make sure that you live well. You don't have to make big changes in your life. You just change how you do the things that you do. You do things well, you do things with the right motivations, and that is really all you have to do. And it turns everything around, and then you are making the good kamma rather than the bad kamma. And it is very sticky. Kamma is very sticky. Sometimes you know you've done something bad and it can stay in your mind for a long, long time afterwards. The same thing if you do something good. And sometimes it carries over from one lifetime to the next. So these things are very sticky here. And for that reason, it is really important to avoid doing anything negative because it goes with you and it can go from many, many lifetimes into the future. And so this is kind of the idea here, understanding the laws of kamma, if you like. So let us move on. Then that noble disciple reflects, it is not just me who is liable to grow old and not being exempt from old age. All sentient beings grow old according to their nature, as long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject often, the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. So here you go from seeing yourself to making a universal understanding. It is not just you. It doesn't matter what happens to you. It doesn't matter where you are reborn. It doesn't matter what kind of being we are talking about. You have here the idea of coming and going, passing away and being reborn. This is like your journey through samsaric existence. It doesn't matter where you go in that journey. There is no avoidance of growing old and then eventually dying, of course. And this is a revolutionary insight because this goes against the ideas of ancient India. The idea of ancient India is that at the core of a human being there is a self, there is an inherent existent entity, and that entity, when you die, it kind of goes back to Brahma again, and it's already part of Brahma, but the illusion of life is gone, and you kind of find yourself with Brahma, and there you are, permanent, stable, lasting forever after, in supreme bliss with Brahma. But the Buddha says it isn't like that. At the very best, you might get reborn in that Brahma realm, but even that Brahma realm, even if the qualities of that realm are similar to what the Brahmins talk about, because these are meditation experiences they have had. So there are these experiences of great bliss, of feeling complete unity with the universe, feeling you have achieved God, these kind of things. These experiences exist, but they are not permanent. The moment you say they are permanent, you're going beyond the evidence, because there is no experience that can be had as a human being that is ever permanent. All our experiences come and they go. So even if you have the most amazing, blissful experience of complete unity with the universe, and you can have those experiences, even if you have that, if you say it's permanent, if it is underlying all existence, you're going beyond the evidence. But it's very tempting to say that about those experiences. It is very tempting because they are so incredibly powerful. You feel more alive, they feel more real than everything you have ever experienced. And because they feel more real, you assume that this is the real underlying reality, whereas the rest of the world is like a dream. But be careful, because again, actually you have no evidence for that. All you know is that something has arisen because of certain cause and conditions. Part of those cause and conditions is sitting on your bottom watching your breath. That's one of those conditions. This is where the breath meditation leads you. But then when the momentum of that state comes to an end, because you enter these things with a certain amount of energy or momentum, if you like, to use a worldly simile, then you come out again. And this is the problem. Actually, what happens is that, yes, even if you get reborn in those states, old age must come. This is universal. And that understanding of the universality of old age is sufficient to turn you off all rebirth, all kind of areas. And that is why, when you do that, the path can be born in you. The path being born in you means you become a stream enterer. You have seen the kind of the downside of all existence. That's essentially what this is about. And once you have seen the downside of all existence, you reject that, and that rejection of that, the nibbida, leads to the stream enterer, the insight into all of these things. And then once you are a stream enterer, well, then you cultivate that path. You make much of it, and by doing so, you give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. In other words, you become an arahant, you become a fully enlightened being. When all the fetters, all the ties, all the bondage is gone, that is the meaning of arahantship. So, isn't that kind of extraordinary? The contemplation of old age leads you to becoming an arahant at the end of the day, via becoming a stream enterer. It's such a simple thing, but it is like this. Once you make that universal, once you understand that this is about all beings, that it is where it is so powerful. It is such a simple idea. The Dhamma is not very complicated. Often, we become very intellectual Buddhists, and we think about dependent origination, backwards and forwards, and reverse order, and cessation order, and what have you. And it gets very complicated, and we think, I can't be a Buddhist, it's too hard to be a Buddhist, don't understand anything of Buddhism, nama, rupa, paccaya, vijnana, what does this mean? And it can become this very intellectual pursuit, but of course it is actually very simple, because these are insights. If you can be peaceful, you can have these insights. And to be peaceful, all you have to do is sit on your bottom and watch your breath. Everyone can watch their breath. You don't have to have a very high IQ to watch your breath. You have to be super smart. You have to know any Pali. You don't have to do anything. You can be. It doesn't take very much. And then you have to observe what is going on, and that observation can be done via the idea of old age. And then, the path is born. And it's nice. It kind of, it makes things easy. Not forget about Abhidhamma. Too complicated. Too many things to remember. It just messes up your mind. If you want to study Abhidhamma, please do so. I'm not going to be too down on Abhidhamma. Whatever. There are many other things far worse to study than Abhidhamma. But it's not required, right? It is not really necessary here. And so this is the thing. And, this is also what made the Buddha become the Buddha. We know that from the suttas when he talks about his going forth. He talks about how he was reflecting on life. He talks about reflecting on death, old age, sickness, and a few other things as well. And how that led him to become the Buddha. This was the main driving force in his life. He understood, how can I attach to anything in the world when not only am I going to die, people around me are also going to die? This is crazy. I can't hold on to these things. I'm just asking for suffering. Why ask for suffering if you can find happiness? And so he decided to kind of find a solution to these things. And that's how we have the Dhamma today, because someone really contemplated these things very deeply. Anyway, let us move on. So it is not just me who is liable to get sick, not exempt from sickness. All sentient beings get sick according to their nature. As long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject, often the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. And perhaps you think that there are certain beings that don't get sick. And like in the Brahma realm, you don't really get sick, but that's not the point. The point is that eventually you will get sick, because eventually you come back to be a human being, or you come back to be some other being, and they do get sick. So sickness is always there. You can't escape it by being reborn somewhere. Everything is just a temporary reprieve from illness. Illness is kind of the common underlying thing, and if you feel healthy for a while, that's good, but remember, it's only a short reprieve before you get sick again. That's kind of seeing things in the reverse way. Yeah, health is a reprieve from sickness. So anyway, so I hope that's not too negative for you. So same idea again. Yeah, it's a universal problem, just like I mentioned before. Now let's come to death. It is not just me who is liable to die, not exempt from death. For all sentient beings die according to the nature, as long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject, often the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. Yeah, death is here the most powerful of these contemplations again, depending a bit on your character, depending on what feels natural for you, but generally speaking, death is the most important one. Yeah, all beings are subject to dying. There is no corner of the universe where you can kind of go and you can stay there forever after and everything is fine. Yeah, there is no evidence that could ever support that idea, because everything in our lives is fluctuating all the time. No evidence to point towards permanence. Permanence is an illusion. The idea of a creator God that is so common in various spiritual traditions, including the Hinduism of the time, is really just a projection of the sense of self that we have in us. And so we have a sense of self, we feel permanent, and then we project that idea onto the universe, and that's how you get this idea of a permanent God. But there isn't really any evidence for that. It is just the sense of self, that it feels natural that it should be that way because of our own misunderstanding of what life really is about. And so everything, you must always die, yeah? And you can imagine that death is always traumatic, always very difficult. And imagine that you eventually get reborn in some kind of high, blissful realm. And then one day you have to die from these highest realms. That can be really scary. You have no idea where you're going to go. Probably you're not going to go to a very bad destination straight away, because you are very happy and blissed out. So usually that means you are, probably not, but sometimes you can go. And eventually you will. And it's kind of scary. The universe is kind of the round of rebirth is problematic if you understand what is really going on. Death is always around the corner. It's always possibility. All beings are subject to these things. There's nothing in the world you can hold on to. Nothing in the world you can hold on to. Maybe with the exception of the Dhamma. The Dhamma you can hold on to, but even the Dhamma eventually disappears. And when it disappears, that one thing that you can hold on to is no longer available. That's terrible. What happened to that one thing I was holding on to is no longer here. You get reborn at the time when there is no Dhamma around. And all of those things that we do hold on to, because we are beings who must attach. Attachment is just an expression of our sense of self. You have no choice but to attach. You must attach. But all of those things you attach to cannot be held on to, because nature will claim them. Nature will kind of say, sorry, this is impermanent. It has to go. The time has arrived. Now it's going to be impermanent for you. But you have no option but to attach, because that is an expression of the self. The self feels that it owns certain things, and the most basic things that we own is like your own mind. This is my mind, my consciousness, my doing. Maybe your body, you think of your body as yourself, but that is much more obvious that it isn't yourself. But certainly the mind, that is you, and at the very least you own that. But then that ownership of the mind, because the mind is also related to the world outside. Our perceptions and our feelings are created also by what exists around us. And because of that sense of ownership leaches into the world. You don't just leech your inner states, but you don't just own your inner states, but you also own things, or so you think, in the world. And so you attach to things in the world. And so once there is a sense of self, there must be attachment. Once there is attachment, you are going counter to the nature of the world, and so you will have to suffer as a consequence. And this is the problem, and the only way out of this is to give up the sense of self, because that is where the attachments stop, and that is where you experience the highest kind of bliss that is imaginable in the world, by giving up those attachments. It sounds so counterintuitive, yeah? Surely our attachments lead to happiness, yeah? These are the people in my life, these are the things I own. They give rise to happiness. There's a very cute little sutta called the Piyajatika Sutta. There's a sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 87, I think it is, middle length 87, and it's this man who has lost his son. And he roams around to the graveyard, and he says, "Oh, where is my son? Where is my only son?" But the son has died. He doesn't help to roam around saying, "Where is my son?" Right? And he roams around like this, and suddenly he comes across the Buddha. And he says to the Buddha, "Oh, I have lost my only son. Where is my only son?" And then the Buddha says to him, "Well, you know, the life is such that sorrow, lamentation, and pain arises from those who are dear." That's what he says to this grieving man. Yeah, his man has completely lost his mind because he has lost his son. And then this man says, what are you saying? It's happiness and joy arises from those who are dear. He is sorrowing, he's lamenting, he's full of grief. He's just really completely out of it. He can't eat his food, he can't eat his work. And the Buddha points out the obvious. Sorrow and lamentation arises from those who are dear, because look at you, you are in a terrible state. And then he answers, no, happiness arises from those who are dear. It's like blindness, the inability to see the bleeding obvious. Yeah. And then that man, he goes off and he goes to a group of gamblers. Yeah, gamblers are kind of the low life. Yeah, in kind of spiritual terms anyway. In this particular context. And then he says to these gamblers, "Oh, I say that happiness and joy, arise from those who are dear. But some people tell me that actually suffering arises from those who are dear." And the gamblers say, "Yeah, you are right. Happiness and joy comes from those who are dear." So the gamblers are compared to the Buddha here in this particular sutta. And this is our human life. Yeah, it's very, very hard to accept some of these realities, and we cling on even when we understand that actually this is dangerous. And so this then becomes when you understand the universality of death, you understand the universality of that you are asking for suffering in this world with this whole thing, then again your mind turns towards the spiritual path. I want to get out of this. This is really problematic. You become peaceful, your meditation becomes deeper, and you use it in the right way. And then eventually the path is born because you understand the universality of suffering. If this suffering is universal, well, you better let go of everything. That means you become a stream enterer, and down the track you become an arahant as a consequence. So then the next one, it is not just me who must be parted and separated from all I hold dear and beloved, for all sentient beings must be parted and separated from all they hold dear and beloved, as long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject often, the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. Nothing that you can hold on to. Everything must always go. Yeah, all the time, again and again and again. And we have done this a million times before, and then you realize that this is just silly. It doesn't make any sense. All you're doing is creating suffering for yourself. The time has come to let go. Let go in a deep sense. Again, move towards a spiritual practice. Find the inner refuge, the refuge of meditation, where you find peace and stillness and happiness and joy within. At least that is something over which you have some say, some control, At least as long as you're able to meditate well, you practice in the path well. So you find that refuge within. It's a beautiful thing to find the refuge within. You can close your eyes at any space, anytime, anywhere, and just allow the world to fade away and find all the meaning you ever wanted inside of yourself. That is such a beautiful idea. Yeah, you can just close your eyes in a busy airport and just allow the world to fade because you have no interest in what is going on. You can do that here, you can do it at any time. Yeah, and then all of these things they start to lose their meaning because you're finding it somewhere else. And eventually you take that even further to the point where you find also, you take it all the way to very deep meditation and all the way to deep insight. And that is where the real refuge, the final refuge is found, where the world can no longer touch you in the way that it used. Yeah, and there is no such thing anymore as separation from the beloved and the dear, because you have understood the world and you are ready to allow things to go when they have to go. Okay, and then we have the last one. It is not just me who shall be the owner of my deeds, the heir to my deeds. For all sentient beings shall be the owner of the deeds, the heir to their deeds, as long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject often, the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. Yeah, and the idea here is to remember that you have to experience the results of your good and bad actions. And sometimes people think, well, that means I can just do good actions, yeah, and I'll be right, there'll be no problems. I just make sure I do good actions and no worries. So this means I can control my destiny. What's the point of the Dhamma? Yeah, I just control my actions and yay, I go to happy destinations all the time and no worries. Actually, worries, yeah. And no worries, here we can't use the that nice Australian saying, which is apparently spreading around the English language around the world. Everyone is starting to say no worries now. You go to the UK, everyone is saying no worries. It's one of the great Australian exports. It's a very useful expression, but there are worries. And the worry is that basically we are conditioned. And so whether you do good or bad, it's not really up to you at the end of the day. You can't control this, yeah? And this is the problem. And so you get in with the wrong company, you get the Papa Mitta instead of the Kalyana Mitta. The Papa Mitta are the bad friends, yeah? And you will sometimes have bad friends because maybe you get reborn in the wrong family, you could go to the wrong school, yeah? Whatever, you don't know. And suddenly you're heading in the wrong direction. And it's not really up to you, because that you, which you think is there, actually isn't there. The illusion of the self makes it feel as if you can withstand the world, but that is an illusion. Yeah, the reality is that you are conditioned by what happens around you. And so whether you can withstand it or not depends on your conditioning. You don't know exactly what your conditioning is, so you can maybe withstand a little bit, but not all that much. And before you know it, you're heading in the wrong direction. And so the karma that you make is not something that you can control. Yes, right now you are under the influence. Are you you're under the influence of the Dhamma, yeah? So because you are under the influence of the Dhamma, you're heading in the right way, but suddenly you're under the influence of something else, and then you're heading in the wrong direction, and then you do bad things. So actually understanding the laws of karma in conjunction with non-self is kind of frightening, because it means that you have no idea. You go up and down through the rebirths, no idea really where you're going to go in the long run. Okay, maybe this life you have a good sense that you are heading off in a good direction, and that may be the case. And maybe that even will last for a few lifetimes if you are deeply steeped in the Dhamma. But there will come a time when things change, yeah, and then you are in trouble. And seeing this grand picture of the world, yeah, with old age, with sickness, with dying, with being separated from everything, with the laws of karma kind of ruling you in this way, it becomes kind of a bit unbearable. And you really want to find that refuge within. You want to find the refuge on the spiritual path. You understand that is the only refuge. There is no other thing to be done. This is the power of these contemplations. So let's just very briefly just read out the verses here, yeah, because the verses are kind of nice. For others, sickness is natural, and so are old age and death. Though this is how the nature is, ordinary people feel disgusted. Yeah, you feel disgusted by these things when you should actually embrace them and use them for your spiritual practice. If I were to be disgusted with creatures whose nature is such, it would not be appropriate for me, since my life is just the same. Living in such a way, I understood the truth without attachments. I mastered all vanities of health and of youth, and even of life, seeing renunciation as sanctuary. Zeal sprang up in me, and I looked to extinguishment. Now I'm unable to indulge in sensual pleasures. There's no turning back. I'm committed to the spiritual life. Okay, so there you are, everyone. That is the sutta for this afternoon. So please keep on enjoying yourself, and we'll see you back in at 7 o'clock this evening. Yeah.